This is the story of a mountain soaring 500 feet above its base. A base whose elevation is 11,000 feet. Accessible only through 75 miles of remote jungle and up a sheer 2,100-foot rock face. Lying along the equator, this glacier-capped land is called Irian Jaya. It's a province of Indonesia covering half of the island of New Guinea. It is here, under terms of an agreement with the Indonesian government, that men will move a mountain. The story began in May 1960, when an exploratory expedition hacked its way through the jungle. The exploration was financed by Freeport Minerals, the parent corporation of a company which would be called Freeport Indonesia. The man who led this expedition was a mining geologist named Forbes Wilson, now president of Freeport Indonesia. From the tropical rainforest, the explorers worked their way up an unmapped region that Indonesians call Pegunungan Jaya Wijaya. Up a sheer 2,100-foot water-drenched cliff. With the support of Papuan guides, Forbes Wilson and fellow geologist Del Flint clambered over the top to discover an outcrop jutting out of a highland plateau.
Now, Del and I didn't discover that thing. To a degree, we rediscovered it. We sampled it. We were the first people to measure its potential. We determined there is 13 million tons of high-grade copper ore sitting up there like a thumb. The first man that saw that thing over there was Jean-Jacques Dossy, a Dutch geologist. He was a man that walked over and hit it for the first time with a hammer. He identified you could immediately see that bright yellow chalcopyrite. He's the man that gave it the name. He called it the Ertsberg. In Dutch, that means the ore mountain. And it would be damned hard to find a more significant and proper name for that mass of ore, because truly it is a mountain of ore.
Discovering a mountain of copper ore is one thing. Moving it to the outside world is another. This region of swamp and jungle and ragged peaks is one of the last unexplored lands of the world. It is a place of sorcery and mystery and of beauty. Who make their home in the highlands are a self-sufficient people, a people of another age and another culture, isolated from the rest of the world by mist-shrouded jungle peaks. The Papuans of the swampy coastland have had more contact with the outside world, but they still live in isolation. As a result, the currents of tribal custom and tradition run deep.
Bulan baru ketika sarimu wawandra paina sawe wadame
the astonishment of coastal Papuans, a freighter arrived at the mouth of the Tipoca River, the first in a series of events that would be strange to Papuan life. First, there was no place for helicopters to land. Men were lowered into the jungle to clear areas for chopper pads and tent camps.
I can remember the first day I landed in West area. The PBY landed in the Tipoca River, and I emerged through the bubble with my white shirt, tie, dress pants, dress shoes, stepped into an aluminum outboard hull. I stepped out of the hull with my shoes wrapped around my neck and my pants rolled up above my knees and walked through the mud up to the water's edge. From there I walked through the company street, not knowing anyone, not seeing a familiar face.
Camp 1, beachhead for the entire project. Until a base could be established farther inland, all equipment and materials would be moved into the mountains from here. There would be 4 main areas to develop. A port on the Tipoca River 6 miles from the sea, a town site located in the mountains at 6,000 feet elevation and 68 miles from the port, a mill site at 9,000 feet, 74 miles from the port, and the mine site at an elevation of 11,500. Strung through this area would be 19 camps, tent camps at first, then porta camps as logistics permit. The mountain of ore remained dormant until 1967, when Indonesia's new foreign investment law allowed Freeport to sign the first contract. A year later, a joint venture of Bechtel and Santa Fe Pomeroy was selected to carry out engineering feasibility studies. In the spring of 1970, engineering, procurement, and construction were authorized to commence.
Stateside, the 2 main problems that were presented to me were the construction of the road and logistics on the project. Logistics. If we needed a pound of nails, the closest hardware store was 600 miles across the Arafura Sea in Darwin. About the time I arrived, we were constructing mountain camps, and we needed approximately 400 sheets of plywood.
a call was put through to Darwin, and the complete stock of Darwin was bought out. This comprised 20 sheets. This gave us an idea of how difficult the logistics were going to be to operate out of Darwin. We had to look for another site.
L-204B helicopter is one of 6 we used on the West Irian job for logistics support. The helicopter day started each morning at 3 a.m. when the loadmasters begun loading the helicopters. At 5:30, the pilots were out for pre-flight and takeoff time was 6 o'clock.
These helicopters supported 15 mountain camps with food, cargo, heavy equipment, in order to build a 75-mile road.
It is an amazing sight to me to go up to Darnell Ridge and see 13 D8s and D9 dozers cutting off the top of the ridge to make enough room for switchbacks. I can remember D6s pioneering side hill cuts along rocky ledges with the operators pushing rock and dirt over a 3,000-foot cliff with one eye on their work and one eye on the overhanging rock and dirt above them.
For nearly 40 miles, the road is fairly level, running through tidal swamps, then jungle, and across 2 rivers. Then zigzags another 22 miles into the mountains, along steep, narrow ridgebacks and through shale and granite rock, requiring excavating and bulldozing to keep the grade below 20%. For months, the road builders lived a pioneer, isolated existence, depending solely on helicopters for food and their working materials. When the fog moved in, even helicopter contact with the outside world was cut off. Where mountain ridges were too difficult to go over, tunnels were punched through. One was the 3,627-foot Honeycomb Tunnel. The other, the 2,786-foot Zagam. And construction of both of these were completely supported by helicopter. Weather was one of the biggest obstacles on the job. During the wet season, as much as 50 inches of rain fell per month. This made helicopter flying hazardous. Clouds from the Arafura Sea would move in at amazing speed. Helicopters taking off in clear weather would run into rain and fog, necessitating a return to their base. completion, logistics operations were transferred from helicopters to trucks. 6,000 tons of cargo was trucked to the mountains, sometimes in excess of 500 tons a day. Most of these trucks required bulldozer assistance up the high mountain roads. At mile 68, a campsite. Elevation 6,000 feet. Population 200 men and an undetermined number of feathered friends.
At one time, we operated 16 camps and 22 mess halls on this job. Some things that are interesting is the great amount of rice that we used. The Filipino, Korean, and Indonesian personnel ate more than 2 pounds of rice per day per man. At top production, we were using 60,000 pounds of rice per month, along with 150,000 eggs and 10,000 pounds of sugar per month.
With the road to Camp 68 completed, headquarters for the entire project was transferred there. At peak operation, 2,100 men would be needed on the job. 3/4 of them would be Indonesian. "2,500 miles away, in the Indonesian capital of Jakarta, recruiting got underway. Project representatives worked closely with Indonesia's Department of Manpower, and a skilled workforce began to gather. They came not only from the capital, but from throughout Indonesia. And from other nations too: Korea, the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, the U.S., and Canada. The landing strip carved from jungle lowlands became an instantaneous international airport, a melting pot of nationalities, languages, and customs. Men from the north arrived on Indonesian airlines, and from the south on Freeport's own aircraft, a folk of friendship. Concurrent with construction activity, Freeporters were at work on the ore body itself, preparing the site for the day when mining operations would begin. With the early exploratory drilling, the ore body had been firmed up at 33 million tons. And on the river, 6 miles from the sea, a new port was being built. A mangrove swamp was filled with river dredgings. One day, ships would take on cargo here. Copper concentrate bound for Japan and West Germany. Ships of 15,000 to 25,000 tons would make this a port of call. Here would rise warehouses, a power plant, housing, dewatering facilities, and storage for ore concentrate. All the facilities of a modern marine terminal had to be built on this jungle river, from barge ramps and mooring fenders to conveyors and a shiploader. Each morning in the lowlands, the brush crews boarded swamp ferries for the trip upriver. They were mostly local men, accustomed to the jungle heat and familiar with swampy terrain. supply, project carpenters simply turned to the surrounding jungle. Tall jungle trees served another purpose too. Subsurface for the road. The logs were used to corduroy the roadbed, and gravel was poured over them for the finished surface. Pipe was shipped in to span the 69 miles from port to mill site. In slurry form will be carried by a 4 1/4 inch pipeline to the port. For the first 23 miles of its journey, the ore slurry will be pumped over mountain ridges surrounding the mill site. Then gravity will take over on a 46-mile downhill slide to the port. Installing a mining operation anywhere is no small task. But in a remote and rugged territory where no road nor settlement existed before, it was an almost impossible task. Everything brought in was loaded on barges. Heavy equipment, cat parts, cement, conveyor belts, canned goods, Band-Aids, everything. And pushed 11 miles upriver to a landing, there only to be reloaded for further hauling inland. This supply route continued throughout the 27-month construction period.
Toughest part of this job, I feel, that came in about 3 different phases. I think the road was probably the toughest on equipment by far, but the work that was the toughest on the men and the hardest work, mainly because we couldn't get them the equipment when they needed it, was at the Ertsberg. It was very, very difficult working conditions up there for the first 4 or 5 months.
22 years of construction, I've been all over the world, and I've yet to see a place equal to this. We have about 4 hours of good weather a day, and the rest is rain, sleet, and fog. The overburden here is so dense that you could hardly walk around on it. Our major effort was to get accessibility from one area to the other, like the swing bridge we had to build across the canyon here. It was a 45-minute walk around before. Now we have a 10-minute walk over to our barracks and living area. Due to the elevation, our maximum load that we could bring by helicopter was 1,800 pounds. Our helicopter people have done a miraculous job of bringing things in for us, and it has been the only way that we could have opened this job up as early as we have up here.
The mine itself is more than a mile from the mill site, where the copper ore is to be processed. And that mile includes a 2,155-foot vertical lift. A high line served as the first link between mine and mill site, transporting men and small cargo to the mountain. Later, a service tramway was installed, carrying men, material, and eventually the 1.5-inch cables for the ore tram system. This system, designed to transport ore from mine to mill, consists of 2 jig-back tramways. Each tramway has 2 cars, and each car can haul 10 tons of ore. When completed, this system would be one of the longest clear cable spans ever built. Construction of the mill presented challenges of its own, ranging from jungle weather and rugged terrain to the inevitable deadlines and logistical problems. Steel forms and girders etched against the sky and mountain walls soon took on the recognizable form of buildings. For many Papuans, a new era was beginning. There were new experiences, new skills to learn. Tools of their era were being replaced by more modern ones. One villager, within his own time, could experience his own tradition and customs while learning new and different skills. This was once Camp 68, a campsite that had grown in 1 year from a few wooden structures to a small city. Now it's called Tembagapura, Copper Town. Population of 1,500 mine workers and their families will live here.
Well, now, the way we're going to tackle this ore body, the mining will start up there at the top. The elevation up at the top is about 12,000 feet. We'll be blasting out ore off the north wall into prepared level areas where we have front-end loading equipment that will be loading 50-ton trucks. There'll be an access road that'll bend around the backside of the Ertsberg, come straight down this valley into the crusher, which will be located over here, just this side of that big white boulder. Trucks will dump the run-of-mine ore into the crusher. It'll be crushed down to about 8-inch size. The material will come up out of that crusher to a conveyor belt, and it will move out here into two 500-ton bins right behind us on what we call Lookout Point. Those bins will feed two independent ore tramways that swoop down in a single span of 5,000 feet, dropping 2,500 feet down to the mill area, and will discharge into an ore stockpile.
Mile 74, the end of the road and the point where the aerial tramways take over. First of all, you'll see 4 cars that carry the ore down from the Ertsberg. These 4 cars ride on 4 track cables each, which makes a sum of 16 track cables that goes from 74, some 5,800 feet. Also, you have a service tramway that has 4 more track cables. This carries the car that carries, upwards to 30 people up and down each night.
At the mill, the ore passes into the secondary crusher and is broken into fine material. Conveyors carry the fine ore to storage bins, ready for processing. In March 1973, in the midst of the early operation of the plant, a jet roared into Irian Jaya. The plane bore a special guest, His Excellency General Suharto, President of Indonesia, along with other government officials, come to help dedicate Freeport's new mining facilities. It was a festive occasion for the local people as well as Freeporters when they welcomed the President and his party. A plaque was unveiled dedicating the new town. A gift was presented to President Suharto. Next day, at formal ceremonies in the concentrator building, Forbes Wilson acknowledged the cooperation of the many participants.
Your presence here serves to dramatize that this difficult and demanding project has moved forward as a result of the cooperation of the Indonesian and other governments, of many people and many public and private institutions. What has been accomplished up to this point has required international cooperation.
Mr. Franz Kasiepo, Governor of Irian Jaya, then spoke to the gathering.
A man who has cooperated with us over the years and contributed a great deal to its success. I introduce His Excellency, Dr. Sumantri, Minister of Mines.
Yang saya muliakan, para hadirin sekalian yang terhormat.
Professor Dr. Sumantri assisted Freeport Indonesia from the signing of the work contract in 1967 to the completion of this first mining job, a job undertaken to implement the government's new foreign investment policy. He acknowledges the accomplishment of the project and the benefits already accruing to his country in terms of money and employment. Mining enterprises, he states, can become centers of growth.
I now have the honor to introduce His Excellency, General Suharto, President of the Republic of Indonesia.
The President points to progress made under his administration's 5-year plan, during which the Ertsberg project was undertaken. This enterprise is the pioneer of foreign investment in Indonesia. It demonstrates a confidence in the determination of the Indonesian people to build their future, a confidence which has stimulated other investors to come to Indonesia. It is a demonstration of success through applied capital, technology, skill, and devotion. It was on this occasion that President Suharto announced that West Irian would be known henceforth as Irian Jaya. Jaya means great or prosperous, a name which matches the development prospects Indonesian leaders see for this vast and rugged province. Two 16-foot diameter ball mills grind the ore to a fine pulp. Samples are taken at regular intervals and analyzed in an on-site laboratory. Chemical reagents are added to the pulps, some of which selectively coat the particles of copper sulfide to make them water repellent, while others help in producing a froth. Air is bubbled through the pulp. Coated particles of copper sulfide adhere to the air bubbles and are floated off as a mineralized froth. This rough concentrate is then treated in a series of flotation cells, regrind mills, and thickeners to produce a slurry. The thickened slurry is then held in storage ready for pumping down the pipeline.
Port side, port side. We're ready to start the pumps now.
Pumps and gravity propel the concentrate some 69 miles down the mountainside and across the lowlands to the port. This is Amamapari, Freeport's fourth area of the project. At this port, vacuum filters remove most of the water. The copper cake is then run through an oil-fired rotary dryer. It was the middle of November 1972 when the first dried concentrate was conveyed into storage. Shipments of concentrates containing copper and small amounts of gold and silver sail from here to the smelters in Japan and Germany. This mountain of copper ore, tucked away on a remote highland plateau, stands today as a symbol. Because what was accomplished here was not just a tough job, it was a near impossible job. So it stands as a symbol for men who refused to believe the task could not be done. Men from the Irian Jaya villages, men from other parts of Indonesia, other continents, from another age. People of differing languages and custom and belief, all working together. It stands not only for craftsmanship and know-how, but for courage and understanding. Technology and engineering, of course. Yet the men who carved it from the jungle may remember the Ertsberg project in another way. This, they may tell you, is an accomplishment of the human spirit.
Sarma